don't know if you can feel it, but like the madness is right there. It's upon us. 6 days until Selection Sunday, and the auto bids, those are rolling in this week.
Yep, SoCon and Sunbelt tickets will get punched tonight. 3 more got added on Sunday. Congrats to Drake, Stetson, and Longwood into
Stetson.
Yeah, Stetson.
I know, right?
That was close. That ASUN tournament got a little while even earlier in the campaign. Now, those 3 schools represent the champions of the Missouri Valley, ASUN, and Big South, with many more to follow this week in college hoops. If we get to our auto bid tracker, they join Morehead State, which won the Ohio Valley Conference title over the weekend. So the CAA, Horizon League, Summit League, and West Coast Conference are in semifinal action today. All right, let's welcome in our college analysts, Chip Patterson and Jerry Palm. Palm, our bracketologist here. So for the first 2 finals that we'll break down, we're going to have Chip go first, give us the game preview, and then Jerry, of course, you give us the big picture of where the conference potentially could be seated in terms of its champions. So, Chip, let's start in the Sun Belt. We got Arkansas State and James Madison. What catches your eye in this one?
Oh, just a chance for James Madison to be able to climb back in this. Remember, they lost both regular season meetings against App State. That was the team they couldn't get past. And then App State loses on a buzzer beater to Arkansas State in the semis. It seems like for a 30-win team in James Madison, a team that has the nation's longest winning streak at 12 games active right now. You know, TJ Bickerstaff, Terrence Edwards, they started the year beating Michigan State. They could cause problems in the NCAA tournament, but they still got to take care of business. To me, it seems like the Dukes are playing with all the pressure. Arkansas State coming off that buzzer beater. Look for them to be the loose team going into the game.
Yeah, and for seed, I mean, James Madison, you know, like Chip said, they beat Michigan State to start the year, but their strength of schedule is really bad. Among all of the teams that could make the tournament, theirs is probably the worst. However, they still had a good year in the Sun Belt, and they'd probably be a 12 seed thereabouts if they win this game. If it's Arkansas State's going to fall more into the 14-15 range, which would be, you know, pretty typical for a team that was the 4 seed in a league like the Sun Belt.
So in that Sun Belt final, we see 4 versus 2, gentlemen. Over in the SoCon final, it's 7v1. We got ETSU and Samford. A lot to be undecided here, Chip Patterson. What's the deal in this one?
Yeah, I know we think of these champions as Cinderellas, but East Tennessee State is the Cinderella of the SoCon, making it all the way here. But I think midnight's coming, and it'll be coming in the form of Samford, because Samford has been just so far ahead of the rest of the SoCon. They've got a really, really deep rotation. They play really, really fast. They get up a ton of threes. I mean, just athletically, they have looked so different than the rest of the conference competition. You can see it with the betting spread right there at 10.5. They shoot the 3 really well. They get a lot of points from 3. And just the other teams in that league do not have the skill to be able to keep pace when Samford gets hot. Now, is it possible that they're a little bit rocky? East Tennessee State playing with a little bit of magic? Absolutely. But this Samford team, they have had their eyes set on this conference title, on this NCAA tournament bid. They've been handling their business all season. I don't expect that to change here tonight.
Yeah, and Samford is a team in the top 75 of the net, you know, and they're way ahead of everybody else in this league in terms of the net ranking, for what that's worth in terms of predicting a winner. But in terms of their seed in the NCAA tournament, they fit right in, right about a 12, maybe a 13, depending on what happens in some of these other tournaments. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up a 12 seed, and probably a 12 seed that a 5 doesn't want to play. So, but if it is East Tennessee, they're going to be in the 16 range. It could be a 15, depending on if there's other upsets in conference tournaments. But East Tennessee would be playing probably a number 1 to start the tournament.
Samford trying to party like it's 2000, and if it's ETSU, they'll get back to the dance for the first time since 2017. Taking a look at the bracketology from our Jerry Palm. The bubble teams are always the topic of conversation. Last 4 in: New Mexico, Colorado, Seton Hall, St. John's. First 4 out: Pitt, Utah, Texas A&M, and Iowa. So for these, we'll start with Jerry and then have Chip follow. Jerry, let's start with the Lobos. One of your last 4 in, entering the Mountain West tournament. What do the Lobos need to do to try to secure that resume and bid?
Yeah, well, they got Air Force to start the tournament, so obviously they can't lose to Air Force again. That's the reason why they're on the bubble to begin with, is they lost to Air Force at home. New Mexico is primarily a home court hero, but then they take losses to UNLV and Air Force at home, and now you wonder if they're an any court hero. But now they're on a neutral floor, at least unless they play Vegas. So Air Force must win, and then they get Boise State. If they can beat Boise State on a neutral floor, I think they'll punch their ticket. Otherwise, they're in for a very nervous Selection Sunday.
Tommy, you know as well as anybody, you're dialed in on the Mountain West. Really disappointing month for New Mexico. This is a group that you feel like should be winning more games. The efficiency numbers say they're really good, but when it comes time to close it out, you know, whether it's Jalen House, Jamal Mashburn Jr., JT Toppin, man, one of our Jays have got to be able to come up with a winning bucket. And too many times in conference play, the Lobos, a group who I have on a power rating, conversation, maybe the second best team in the conference, but they've got a 10-8 conference record, and it has been the inability to have success at the margins that has really hurt New Mexico. So yeah, they've got the ceiling to win the whole daggum tournament, take the automatic bid and not even sweat Selection Sunday, but the consistency of performance has not been there.
I, for one, am excited for the Mountain West Tournament, to the surprise of no one. Of course, they're out in Las Vegas. All right, let's get to the Big East, which features two teams in Jerry Palm's last four in. We're talking about Seton Hall and St. John's facing out in the first round of the quarterfinals. So, Jerry, is this the quintessential loser leaves town type of game? And also, what does the winner still need to do?
Well, obviously, the winner's going to be in better shape. The loser may not necessarily be eliminated, because you have to keep in mind a lot of teams on the bubble, probably all of them, are going to lose their final game. So there still would be hope for St. John's or Seton Hall if they were to lose, but obviously you're done making your case at that point. And then your next game, UConn. Well, now there's an opportunity to really send a message to the committee that you're ready to get into the NCAA tournament if you can go out and beat UConn at Madison Square Garden on what is supposed to be a neutral floor. I don't know how neutral it'll be. If it's St. John's, it's actually considered a home game, because they play enough games at Madison Square Garden for that to qualify as a home court. But if you get by UConn, then you probably feel very good on Selection Sunday. But if you don't, both of these teams are going to be kind of nervous on that day.
Just an amazing representation of college basketball, that a team that is so, by their own coach's analysis, slow and unathletic is going to be in the position to maybe win its way into the NCAA tournament. Amazing stuff that we have here. I think St. John's late season surge is one of the best stories that we have going on in the Big Dance, and the chance for them to be able to play their way into the NCAA tournament in Madison Square Garden. Rick Pitino and Danny Hurley respect each other a lot, but they don't necessarily like each other a lot. And we saw that from some of those matchups right there. As a basketball fan, I would love to see St. John's be able to continue this. Because what we've seen from them over the last 2 weeks or so really has been an impressive turnaround from what has to be the lowest of lows.
Anytime you have your head coach publicly criticize you and throw you under the bus, it really can go one of two ways, and it's thankfully gone the right way for the Red Storm since then, right? So, Jerry, if we get to the ACC, give us the lay of the land on Pitt right now, which is one of your first teams out.
Yeah, in fact, that's a really interesting draw, because the 5 seed, Pitt's a 4, the 5 seed is Wake Forest. And if Wake Forest gets to that game, that's another situation similar to the one that Seton Hall and St. John's are in, where the loser might very well be out. The winner still has a chance to play themselves in, but hasn't guaranteed they're going to get themselves in. And, for Pitt, Pitt's had, some hits. I mean, they won at Duke. They've got some good things on their resume, but the consistency just hasn't been there. And that shows up as well. Wake Forest has been kind of a home court hero until they lost at home to Georgia Tech. But if Wake Forest can get a quality win away from home, that might be enough to push them in. Pitt beating Wake Forest may or may not be enough. We'd have to wait and see, because all of these bubble teams are still playing, but a win over North Carolina right after that would probably make Pitt fans feel pretty good on Selection Sunday.
Yeah, that's kind of the way that I see it too, Jerry. When you see that the opportunities are going to be there to have quality wins, that's about the best thing you could get from a bracket draw. And the ACC does not have a lot of opponents for Pitt that would necessarily be the kind of resume improving wins that you would have. You know, Wake is a maybe, Carolina's a definitely, but that is all right there. And this Pitt team, you know, knows that it can play with Wake Forest, knows that it can play with North Carolina, because they've been competing with everybody in the conference. It is, as Jerry mentioned, a consistency issue for Bub Carrington, Blake Henson, and the rest of those Panthers.
And guys, when we talk about Arch Madness, Jerry, I'll start with you. It just seems like whatever iteration of the Missouri Valley we get, it's tough to get multiple teams into the dance here. What chance do you give Indiana State after that game with Drake that we saw on CBS over the weekend?
Well, not much of one. You know, their overall strength of schedule isn't great. They did play Alabama and Michigan State outside the league on the road, of course, double-digit losses, as you might expect. But yeah, the worst thing that happened to Indiana State was to get ranked. They took their 2 worst losses of the season that week. And if they don't lose those games, we're having a different conversation about Indiana State. And really the only sliver of optimism I could find is that in 2019, the first year of the net, Belmont made the NCAA tournament as an at-large team with a resume that doesn't measure up to this one. So there's hope maybe for Indiana State in that, but the odds are not very good for them to get selected as well.
Yeah, super disappointing. Great basketball team. Robbie Avila would have been just like such a great March Madness sort of icon of that weekend. I mean, we'd be talking about Steph Blurry, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Larry Nerd, Larry Blurred. Like we would have had all of it right there for us. But it is looking like, as Jerry mentioned, they might be on the outside looking in, but still phenomenal team, Indiana State. But remember this Drake squad, because we've had our eye on them, a trendy pick to maybe upset Miami last year in the NCAA tournament. So not surprising that it was Drake that ends up breaking through. This is not just Indiana State losing. This is Drake getting right back to where they deserve they should be, and that's another shot at the NCAA tournament.
Chip, that's a very good point. I'm glad we ended on that. Chip Patterson and Jerry Palm. Gentlemen, thank you, giving us the very latest as we get ready for Selection Sunday. Ion College Basketball Podcast will have you covered every single day leading up to the national championship game. Co-host Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander delivering the goods.